House of Assembly holds public hearing on anti-corruption bill. Plus, Nigeria Association of Women Journalists congratulates Nigerian women on observance of 2022 International Women's Day. Good evening and thank you for joining us on the news tonight. I am Achibombasi. In celebration of the 2022 International Women's Day, different women groups in Cross River State are besieging the State House of Assembly, appealing for reconsideration of the gender bill, which seeks to provide special seats for women in the national and state houses of assembly, earlier rejected by the Senate during its constitutional amendment process. The women are of the view that the rejection of the 5 gender-focused bill does not only undermine the crucial role women play in national development, but will drastically reduce the representation of women in political office, thereby taking the Nigerian women backward at a time the global community is striving to stem gender biases. Speaker, Cross River State House of Assembly, Ethel Williams, acknowledged the role women play in bringing victory to political parties during elections, assuring that the State House of Assembly will do all within its powers to address gender imbalance. Meanwhile, despite advocacies made to ensure the inclusion of women in decision-making at leadership level, it has been observed that gender inequality is still limiting women from being involved in decision-making on issues affecting them. Maureen Liu Ajong interacted with some women in Calabar on the significance of International Women's Day celebration.
The 1995 Belgian Platform for Action flagged 12 key areas where urgent action needs to be taken to ensure greater equality and opportunities for women and men, girls and boys. Since then, there have been several advocacies for inclusiveness of women in the scheme of things. However, these advocacies, respondents say, has not yielded positive results as women are still pushing for equality, as the case when the president's wife recently led women to the National Assembly to push for constitutional amendment in favor of women.
I think Nigeria can do a lot more in terms of making a strong statement that its women count. So far, 6% or less is not good enough for us. We need to do something about this. We need to change the narrative. Women are an important part of governance, leadership and decision making. This country must rise. And if it must rise with its men and women working together for a better future.
I looked at the National Assembly and I noticed 15 states out of 36 states, they don't have female representative in the national. And I don't think it's okay. I feel that they should look into this and bring in the women into politics.
For these women, their experiences is challenging and they believe women can always surmount challenges of gender inequality.
Women should not just sit down in the house and feel that God will send manna from heaven for them. They should go out. They should look at other women that have achieved and also know that they can equally achieve. They should go out, join politics, do their business, and make sure that this thing that my brother can do, I as a sister, as a woman, I can even do better.
For instance, you talk about my own area of existence or specialty, which as an entrepreneur, existing in all male-dominated environment, which is the maritime business, I'm not really finding it so easy because first of all, you are being looked at as maybe incompetent, not really good enough to be in that platform or in that area of existence, which is a very wrong mentality. So you must be the one now to introduce yourself, to act according to your purpose, to stay focused, to live, your integrity and leave a legacy.
And so, As the world focuses on climate change issues and its effect on women and girls, respondents re-emphasize the need to address the challenges before womanhood. The theme for this year's celebration is Gender Equality Today for Sustainable Tomorrow. Stakeholders note is a workable theme if action is taken for women and by women. In Calabar, Maureen Leo Ajom, NTA News.
Also, the Nigeria Association of Women Journalists, NAWOJ, congratulates Nigerian women on the occasion of the International Women's Day. This report is presented from our studio.
In a statement signed by the national president, NAWOJ, Ladi Bala, affirms that though the celebration of the 2022 International Women's Day would have been one of the best to be celebrated by not just women in Nigeria, but development partners as well as gender activists, if the hope of the Constitution Amendment on gender bills had not been dashed by the National Assembly. In fact, history would have been made by the Ninth Assembly as the legislature that allowed the true definition of democracy to take its roots in Nigeria, but the members chose the path of exclusion and discriminatory agenda against Nigerian women and girls. The sad and unacceptable rejection of the 5 gender bills that speak to the issues against women, especially discrimination and exclusion from involvement in governance and contribution to nation building, is not only shameful, retrogressive, but a huge tragedy in the development space of Nigeria and the eye of the global community. No nation that excludes more than 50% of a segment of its demography can develop as expected. It is therefore pertinent to appeal to members of the federal legislature to, as a matter of urgency, necessity, and in the interest of the spirit and letters of democracy, to disregard their earlier posture and allow for the gender bills to be represented and passed into law.
And from faraway Niger State, the quest to reduce maternal and newborn mortality has again received a renewed impetus with the distribution of delivery kits and food packs to more than 300 pregnant women to encourage antenatal attendance. The benevolence is at the instance of Race Foundation, the PIT project of wife of Niger State Governor, Dr. Amina Abubakar Bello, as part of activities to mark this year's International Women's Day. Fatima Ali reports.
Despite efforts targeted at addressing maternal death across national and subnational levels, its ratio has continued to remain high in Nigeria in the last 2 decades, as it currently accounts for about 20% of global mortality. The ugly trend, experts in health sector attributed to poor attendance of antenatal care, lack of skilled birth attendants, among other unhealthy practices. It was therefore in an effort to further reduce maternal mortality that the PET project of the wife of Niger State Governor, Dr. Amina Abubakar Bello Race Foundation, is intervening in maternal and newborn health care. Latest in the series is the distribution of delivery kits and food packs to more than 300 women in Beji, a community in Boso local government area, as part of activities to mark this year's International Women's Day.
It gives me joy to be able to prevent a maternal death, because really that is one of the biggest problems. All these deaths, most of them are preventable. So it is important that women are supervised so that any problem is taken and nipped in the bud before it becomes a problem.
Antenatal gives a smooth progression of the pregnancy, including the delivery.
Women in other major primary health care centers across the state are also expected to benefit from the benevolence. In Mina, Fatima Aliu, NTA News.
You are watching news reaching you from the studios of Nta Calabar. You can watch this newscast on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Nta Calabar. Let's go take some commercials. See you shortly. studio tonight to speak on the 2022 observance of International Women's Day celebration is the coordinating trustee, the Nta Calabar Foundation, Mrs. Nta Calabar. You're welcome, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
All right. Yes, please. You're welcome. What are the issues this year's celebration seeks to highlight?
Well, the theme for this year is gender equality today for a sustainable tomorrow. The idea is to break the biases that women face, especially in the society, in governance, in politics, in inheritance, in almost every area of life, really. The woman has been looked upon as being, either inferior or less capable, and so the whole theme has been to highlight these disadvantages that women suffer throughout, their lifetimes.
Okay. Is there anything like unconscious barriers or bias? And if there are, what are those actions that can be termed as unconscious bias?
Yes, there are unconscious biases. It's all over society basically. It's unconscious in the sense that it's because you've grown up with a specific kind of upbringing. For example, when children are growing up, the girls are told go into the kitchen, and the boys are told to go out with dad or something to go do something else. So basically, women are brought up in a particular way. So there's a subconscious formation as to roles of women being inferior. And of course, in cultures, for example, that are particularly ruled by traditions and religion, especially where the religion subjugates the woman and puts her in a specific role. So that girl child grows up in that role, never thinking anything outside of that limitation. And so what happens is that even herself, her mindset is structured, to think of herself in that box. So it becomes unconscious, subconscious as it were. Those biases prevail in offices, in careers. You never get to be CEO because you're female. They may not say it, but it's one of those things that happen. And of course, in cultures like ours that are very patriarchal, these are the things that affect us all the time because it's a father's world, let's put it that way. So definitely there are subconscious biases.
Okay, so how can women themselves break away from these biases?
Well, one of the fundamentals is to educate women, is to educate the rural girls. We do a lot of work. And we do a lot of work with widows, and we found out, for example, in Cross River State, we're just talking about our personal experiences now. We found out in Cross River State that there were a lot of widows from the ages of, like 18 to 23, 25, and we're wondering, why did we have such young widows, in the rural areas? And we found out that those girls, many of them drop out of school. Their parents don't think that education is important because they're women, they go to get married. Those are the biases. And so the parents are not ready to spend that extra money to train them. And of course, if they're out of school, it doesn't matter how brilliant they are. What happens is that the next thing is that they're looking for love somewhere because they need, to be appreciated, to be, they need affirmation as to their person. And so they go out looking for that stuff and end up with, the village local champion, who is probably, who's able to bring some money to the parents or something, and then the next thing they're pregnant, the next thing maybe because he's a drunk, he's dead in a few years, and so you have young widows. So we realized that rather than focusing so much on the widows, we needed to begin to turn attention to educating young girls so that we don't feed the stream. If you break that ignorance in young girls, you'll find them making right choices. You'll find them aspiring to be better than where they are. And it's the education that is key. Educating the girl child, educating the rural child, male and female, so that they can aspire to be better than they are. It's a global village now. So let's take education to them via technology. So that's one of the basic things of breaking this mold.
Thank you so much, ma'am. If you're just joining us, we have been speaking with the coordinating trustee of the Nta Nsa Adegoke Foundation. Mrs. Imansa Adegoke. Thank you so much for coming on the news.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
Thank you very much.
The Cross River State House of Assembly is taking steps to set up a body to facilitate the process of the passage of the Cross River State Anti-Commission Corruption Bill 2022. The State House of Assembly is conducting public hearing to get input of relevant stakeholders. Justina, it's a report.
The Anti-Corruption Commission Bill, sponsored by the member representing Bokitu constituency, Hilary Bisang, and other co-sponsors, passed second reading on the 3rd of March 2022 and was subsequently referred to the House Committee on Public Accounts and Judiciary with a mandate to report back to the House in 1 week. This public hearing is part of the process to facilitate its passage.
Corruption does not fall into the exclusive list. To tap it all, like I said, the Supreme Court, the recent Supreme Court I said this fund belongs to the state. So the state must legislate on it.
The Cross River State House of Assembly will never legislate on anything that it lacks jurisdiction.
Relevant stakeholders agree that the bill, when passed into law, will ensure accountability and transparency in the management of public funds, as well as checkmate excesses of public office holders.
Because we have, as auditors general, have struggled with the efficacy of our reports. They've not had efficacy because the people feel the auditor will just write and we will go scot-free. But now that we have a commission to handle these matters, it further gives credence to our work.
So I think that this law will help to a large extent to perhaps strengthen the work that the auditors do.
The lawmakers say the commission will also be empowered to investigate and monitor contracts awarded by the state government to ensure full execution. In Calabar, Justina Etam, NTA News.
Operatives of Yahya Motorized Patrol, Cross River State Command, National Drug Law Enforcement Agency intercepted a 31-year-old man for trafficking cannabis sativa from Mbok Junction, Cross River State to Abakaliki, Ebonyi State. This report is presented from our studio.
The arrest was based on information received at the Yahya checkpoint of NDLEA that Oda Sunday Igwe was carrying cannabis via a commercial bus registration number KUJ 326FX. The operatives, upon arrival of the commercial bus, thoroughly searched the vehicle with all the passengers on board. The search led to discovery of 2 heavy white bags of dried weed suspected to be cannabis. The suspect accepted ownership of the 2 bags. Investigation into the case has since commenced, and more details shall be provided as the case progresses. This is contained in NDLEA statement made public by its public relations officer, Kenneth Odili.
Stay with us.
Keke Litorata Calabar, are you ready? The people of Cross River State will experience the mighty move of God as Dr. Pastor Paul and Dr. Mrs. Becky Paul and Nenche storm the city of Calabar for a healing and deliverance crusade tagged "Every Knee Shall Bow." Healings, signs and wonders, restoration of human destinies, and declarations on the land. Ministering in songs, Deborah Paul and Neche, Emma Sings, and Daniel Ekiko. Happening live at the UJ SNS Stadium, Calabar, Cross River State, on Thursday 10th to Friday 11th March 2022, 5 p.m. daily. Special feature include Ministers Church Workers Conference. Venue, Dunamis International Gospel Center, Calabar, by Calabar Roundabout, opposite Navy Reference Hospital, Calabar. Date, Friday 11th March 2022. Time, 7:30 a.m. Come and experience His glory. God bless you.
Good to have you back. Again, with me in the studio to speak on the jingle you have just watched is the resident and central pastor, Cross River State Dunamis International Gospel Church, Pastor Samuel Adopa. You're welcome to our studio, sir.
My pleasure.
Now to the jingle we have just played. What is it about?
Well, praise God. It's my pleasure to be here to tell us what the Cross River State Healing and Deliverance Crusade is all about. As it implies, it's a gospel campaign, and with also coming to administer the blessings and the dividends of the gospel of Jesus Christ to everyone in this state. Like the theme tells us, it is all knees shall bow. Now when we talk about knees here, we're talking about forces, it could be spiritual, it could be physical, whatever it is, standing between individuals and standing before us as a people, as a state, that is hindering us from moving forward and becoming all that God wants us to become. Those are the things that the forces and the power of God will be applied to, so that they be subdued for God's people and everyone who will be in attendance to experience a straight path into their destiny.
Okay, talking about those who will be in attendance, is there some kind of restriction? What are those expected?
Well, it's for all and sundry, for the high and the mighty, for the rich and the poor, the strong and the weak, everybody, men, women, children, young people. Salvation is for everybody. God's love is for everybody. Everybody is invited to come for this great meeting, and it threatens to be very rewarding and very impactful. I say this because before now we have seen the gospel train of God's servant, the senior pastor, Dr. Pastor Paul Enenche, has been to so many states of the Federation, and we have seen very strange and terrible acts of God that has characterized his ministry, and we are very confident that the same shall be reproduced here.
How long is this program expected to last?
It's starting Thursday, 10th of March to Friday, 10th and 11th, Thursday and Friday at the stadium, and the Friday morning will be in the church venue. It's a ministers and church workers conference kind of, but the crusade is 5 p.m. on Thursday and 5 p.m. on Friday at the stadium.
Is there any further information you would wish to give to our viewers?
Yes. We would like the people to know. While we're doing the rally, people are saying, transportation. We trust God to provide buses to convey the people to and from the venue of the program. So people should not be too skeptical about it. We have by God's grace, about 24 points in this city where our vehicles with our flag banners advertising the program will be stationed at various junctions within the state capital here, up to Calabar South, up to our Calabar, to convey the people to this program and back.
Thank you, Pastor Samuel Adopa. Yes. Pastor Samuel Adopa is the resident and central pastor, Cross River State Dunamis International Gospel Church. Senate says the court has no constitutional right to stop the legislative arm of government from carrying out its functions as lawmakers. President of the Senate, Ahmed Lawan, stated this at Tuesday's plenary while reacting to the ruling by the Federal High Court sitting in Abuja, restraining the National Assembly from going further to amend the new Electoral Act 2022. He explained that the doctrine of the separation of powers in the Nigerian Constitution conferred on the legislature the function of making and amending laws brought to it by individual members or the executive, and any attempt to interfere with this constitutional duty will amount to infringement of constitutional provisions.
There's clear-cut separation of powers, and I mean separation and exercise of powers. The judiciary, under no circumstance, can stop the legislature, the National Assembly, from performing its legislative duties.
I think the argument you have raised is valid, but this point will present in court to discharge that order. We cannot sit and appeal here on a matter that's already been given an order in court. So I think that we should exercise caution in sitting the judgment over a matter that a decision has been given, or at least an order has been given.
If the judiciary wants to come into the legislature and decide when we sit and when we don't, then there's anarchy. If the judiciary will simply say we are not to consider this and that, and we obey those kind of rulings, that's anarchy. Because it's emasculating the legislature, and that's not supposed to be. So we will continue with what we are supposed to do, because that is our calling. We are just advising that the judiciary should please help us develop this democracy.
That is how far we can go on the news. But before we go, let's take a quick look at some of the stories that made the headlines. The Cross River State House of Assembly has taken steps to set up a body that will be empowered to receive and investigate allegations of corrupt practices against public servants. We also told you that the Nigerian Association of Women Journalists, NAWOJ, has congratulated Nigerian women on the occasion of the 2022 International Women's Day celebration. Thank you so much for being with us. To have a pleasant evening.